Welcome to the Flynn Brothers podcast. I'm John.
And I'm Jimmy. Today's big idea, the aging comedy movie star, part 2.
We investigate the careers of our last two comedy legends.
Later, we share some statistics and solutions that show how comedy movie stars can sustain success.
Finally, we draft the best attributes of all-time comedians to make the ultimate Franken-Comic.
It's all coming up. But first, here's the Solons.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
One little footnote before we begin part 2 is we neglected to mention when we talked about Adam Sandler in part 1, the sort of last movie of his prime was 1999's Big Daddy.
Ooh.
You like Big Daddy, don't you?
Oh, yeah. Criminal oversight on our part.
Yeah. Pretty ridiculous. Luckily, we had a very attentive fan who brought it to our attention, and we were able to put it at the beginning of this podcast. But yeah, Big Daddy, as you know, we talked about in part 1. Again, another perfect example of Sandler balancing aggressiveness and tenderness. You got a early, cold Dylan Sprouse role, lots of heartwarming moments.
Talk about a two-hander.
Yeah. 2-hand in one role. That's like us, 2-hand in the role of one, the one host can do on a podcast. Quick note about Big Daddy. Steve Franks was wrote the story and was the writer for that. He's the creator and wrote a lot of the TV show Psych, one of our absolute favorites. We may be due for a Psych sort of appraisal at some point on one of these, because that's a show we absolutely love that not a lot of folks have seen.
That's true. Big Daddy, I also feel like, was an early precursor to the Sandman getting all his buddies into
Oh,
the
yeah,
movie.
yeah.
Like Schneider, huge role. Allen, Covert.
Yeah. Rob Schneider, first of many sort of racially insensitive performances he gives. Yeah.
I don't know if he's offensive so much as just like really ambiguous.
Yes,
He's
yes.
just sort of, I guess, foreign. Is what you would,
But if it makes you laugh, well, funny's funny. All right, moving on. Okay, next comedy movie star, we have Ben Stiller. Now, he was known for sketch comedy and short films. Only guy we'll talk about who sort of came in as a filmmaker. In his early career in the early 90s, he had a brief stint on SNL. I think it was just a few episodes. And then he was basically making short films and mockumentaries. I think Albert Brooks was one of his heroes, and he kind of took after him. And he had the Ben Stiller Show, which was big on MTV in the 90s. And he had a few early movie roles, but it took him until 1998 to hit his prime. And he had a 6-year prime from 1998 to 2004. His ages, 33 to 39, his median age, 36. Again, we see kind of these early, mid-30s comedy prime. 1998, There's Something About Mary. He is incredible. This is a Farrelly Brothers movie. I just rewatched it. It was one of our favorites growing up. It really holds up, man. It is the rare comedy movie that's like close to 2 hours, I think. Big Lebowski's like this too, where it's just like a lot of movies that are that long, you kind of stop laughing at the 90-minute mark. In the last 20 minutes, it's just like,
Let's finish this.
Let's wrap it up. But you're laughing till the very end, man. And it's so sweet. It's so romantic. The acting is such high caliber acting. Like Matt Dillon and just Cameron Diaz flawlessly cast. She talk about someone who's like in their career prime. She's wonderful in it. And it's just kind of the ultimate Ben Stiller movie.
Loaded too with like twists and turns, things that you're not expecting to
love
happen.
her, man. Yeah, dude. No, it's just like there's something about her. Every single dude you see in this movie is in love with her. Everyone's so conniving. He's the only guy. He's a little conniving, Ben Stiller's character, but yeah, he is. One of his. We'll talk about his superpower and stuff later, but he's just so easy to relate to and root for. You just want to root for him. And maybe it's like part of it's he's kind of short, he's handsome, but he's a little goofy looking like all these other comedy movie stars. But you just see him and you're just like, God, I'm rooting for you.
Yeah, I hope you get the girl, pal. He is, definitely has that, and really portrays himself as an underdog and is also really willing to make himself the butt of the joke. And I think that's really important for when you are sort of handsome in the way that he is, that you are not too cool. Like, never would anyone ever say that Ben Stiller is too cool, particularly in his prime, to do something that makes himself look ridiculous, but that is hilarious.
And then in 2000, he's in Meet the Parents. Robert De Niro, kind of one of his early comedy roles. And it's a great two-hander. One thing that's really cool about Ben Stiller, I would argue he's maybe the most handsome of all the guys we'll talk about. In this movie, he is ripped. There's a scene where they're like in a pool, and they're playing like pool volleyball or something, and it's, it ends in a gag. He gets it like spiked in his face. But like, he's got like a six-pack, and it's just like never really before were comedians known for being like, it's like this dude is like on Atkins or something. Like he's doing 1,000 crunches a day. Like he is so jacked, so cut. And it's just like, and then, we've talked about Tropic Thunder, how he's like ripped in that movie, and it's just like, how is it you're so ripped and I'm dying laughing at everything you're saying?
Yeah, I think he really has this almost action hero approach to comedy, where it's like, I'm gonna really take this seriously and get into almost hilariously great shape. But also, it's just like, I think it's kind of this old school mentality that is sort of passe now, where it's like, if I'm going to be on screen, I'm going to look as good as I possibly can.
It's like how Seinfeld always wears a suit when he performs. It's like, I'm a professional. It's like, you pay me the big bucks, and it's like, I'm going to give you the best version of myself. Yeah.
Can I this is my job, right? Yeah, I could get into really good shape. You're going to pay me multiple millions of dollars. I'll get a six-pack. And I think Meet the Parents, I mean, that was such a humongous movie. Basically, to think about, you're so funny and you've made such a good movie that you gave Robert De Niro a second act as a comedy straight man, kind of like a funny guy. That is basically what De Niro's career becomes after
post 2000. 100%.
The grouchy old man in the movie. And he's just great in it.
Possibly Ben Stiller's greatest character. In 2001, we have Zoolander. Just unbelievably funny. You could, if the Norm Macdonald rule applies, I know movies as funny, but I don't necessarily know any movies that are funnier. It's so incredible. Again, he's really in great shape and super handsome in the movie, and he's still unbelievably funny. It's really quite incredible how he's able to pull that off.
A classic two-hander with Owen Wilson, who also has the, again, humor yet handsomeness. Both of the guys are believable as male models, which I think is really funny. And also just like, what a rich world to satirize and like really just dig your teeth into. And again, these are people who we hold up on a pedestal. These are the best looking fellas. They're wearing the clothes first, before they get released. And they just really, take all of the pomp and circumstance out of it and make, again, an absolute classic.
In 2004, he's got a ton of great movies. He has Along Came Polly with Jennifer Aniston. Really great romantic comedy. I think John Hamburg directs this, and he did I Love You, Man, and I believe Zoolander. He's a really, really great comedy director. He's got the sequel to Meet the Parents, Meet the Fockers, which brings in Dustin Hoffman. And, you meet the Fockers versus the parents this time. And they're quite, needless to say, Dustin Hoffman ain't quite Robert De Niro in terms of the character. And then we have another two-hander with Owen Wilson, Starsky and Hutch. Do It. That's for Will Slade, one of his favorite comedies. And then his great role in 2004. He's the villain in Dodgeball. And as White Goodman, it's one of his best roles. I think next to Zoolander, maybe his strongest work. There is something just so enjoyable about it. Heavyweights is another movie where he's kind of like a trainer at a fat camp, and there is he must just have this kind of darkness to him. He can really just tap into that villain role so well.
Yeah, well, I think it kind of goes back to that idea that we were talking about earlier with Meet the Parents, where he's just ripped, where it's just like you can feel this almost like you have to have a certain contempt almost to get in that sort of shape.
Yes.
Like, you are going to do this work. You are going to do this work. And then once you've done it, you see people who haven't. And I think too, for somebody who is such an everyman, such a rootable character, to play such a detestable villain, like one of the worst guys of all time, totally over the top, the doon surrounded by like, he's just such a pathetic character too, like surrounded by this just all-star team. And then at the end, the fat suit scene with the chicken legs and being against also Vince Vaughn as well. Just the generosity to let Vince Vaughn be the lovable character and to really amp up everything that's hateable about himself to make the movie work. just as what makes it such a classic. There's so many classic lines. I mean, it was such a popular movie that dodgeball actually became a sport.
Right. I think the Ocho is like a thing ESPN
Yes.
will do too, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty cataclysmic in terms of its reach, if you will. Does that make any sense?
It does. I think too. The other thing about him is like in terms of coming from. Like, the term Nepo baby gets thrown a lot.
Sure.
He was from a Hollywood family.
Right.
He's one of those like sort of rare instances though, where it's like almost like the Steph Curry thing. Like his dad was a great comedian, but
And
not
the,
like
and Mira, the
yeah,
wife, yeah.
they're great comedians, but they're not like at his level of being a leading man.
no,
Like
no.
Del Curry was a good sharpshooter
Sure,
or
sure,
whatever,
sure.
and then Steph took that and was like, "What if I also combine that with the ability to be a global superstar?"
Right,
and I think
right.
that is just really what it's in his bones.
Yes,
like he just
yes.
he is
Yeah.
Hollywood.
He had a bit of an extended prime. We got 2006 Night at the Museum. Really great family-friendly fare, but he's really terrific in that movie. Good premise as well. Owes a check maybe to Toy Story, but very, very good. And then 2008, we have Tropic Thunder, which he also co-wrote and directed. We talked about the Cable Guy. Ben Stiller is an incredible director. Like, Tropic Thunder is an all-time comedy. Cable Guy is such a vision. Obviously, he's getting rave reviews with Severance, especially this latest season. But he really just, you see how he started kind of doing short films and the Ben Stiller show and sort of that filmmaking side of him. And it's really just come to fruition all these years later. And it's kind of why, like, he just kind of stopped acting like in the mid 2010s kind of to now. It's just like, I'm just kind of a filmmaker now. And maybe he could feel this thing we're talking about where it's the aging comedy movie star. It's like, I used to be white hot. People used to love me. And it's like, maybe I don't like the roles. Yeah, maybe the economics of comedy movies is different. But yeah, it just seems like he's now in this niche where it's like, he can keep doing Severance, or it's like he could pretty much direct whatever show or movie he wants to do next.
Seems like it to me. And Tropic Thunder is so brilliant for its portrayal of Hollywood, which I think you could only get with somebody who has his background. I mean, there's so many different layers of it. He is playing a aging movie star, which
Right.
he is at this time as well.
Sure.
Also gets into just like absurd ripped shape, is playing a facsimile of Tom
Or
Cruise.
Sylvester Stallone.
Sylvester
Yeah,
Stallone,
yeah,
kind of
right,
both of them,
right.
and then has Tom Cruise in the movie
Yeah,
in
yeah.
unrecognizable
Yeah, yeah.
prosthetics
Yeah,
to where
yeah.
the first time you watched it, you had zero idea
Oh, no
that
clue.
it's Tom Cruise.
No clue. No one knew until the credits when they're showing everyone's clip next to their name. Like, every single person in the theater who watched Tropic Thunder, it's like, this guy's great. And then at the end glass, it's like Ben Stiller, Jack Black, Robert Downey Jr. And then it's like, Tom Cruise, what? It's like, oh my God, I got to buy another ticket to see the movie again.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
And I mean,
incredible.
the ability to thread the needle of the Robert Downey Jr. character, I think, very, very small number of people are able to do that.
We talked about like the great, Bowfinger, the great Hollywood satires. I think Tropic Thunder's way at the top. If you want to go way back, it's Sunset Boulevard, right? These are all movies that, very different in terms of other merits, but in terms of satirizing Hollywood, they're at the absolute pinnacle. They just all do it in such different ways. So yeah, I think Ben Stiller, his superpower. I was struggling a little with this. The other ones are a little more obvious. I would kind of say it's sort of his dryness, his dry sense of humor, and his subtlety. Like, he's pretty good at reacting to stuff. I think too, like, kind of being the butt of the joke, like just a willing butt of the joke, especially as someone like who's involved in the creative side of a lot of these projects. It's just like very smart movie architecture. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think? If you had to kind of pinpoint sort of what you think Ben Stiller's superpower is as a comedy leading man, what would you, in a pithy fashion, how would you capture it?
Just the complete package. Like, it really knows how to make every part of the movie better.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody else knows how to direct like he does,
Yes,
who we've
yes.
talked about
Yeah,
here.
true.
He can star as the villain. He could star as the leading man. He could be the romantic interest. He can be a parody version of himself.
Yeah.
Like, there's a million different...
It's like in the NBA, Nikola Jokic is a perfect player to build a team around because you could put anyone around him. It's like Ben Stiller's the perfect guy to build a movie around. Have him as your leading man. Have him as your director. Have him as as your writer. Yeah, it could be any of them.
Just is like A minus in all of the things that you would want a comedy person to be. Like maybe some other people like Jim Carrey, bigger expressiveness. Adam Sandler, even a little bit more rootable and maybe even a little bit better in rom-coms.
Yeah.
But like nobody really puts everything together the way that Ben Stiller does.
We talked about 2011's Tower Heist with Eddie Murphy. That's kind of his last comedy, Ben Stiller, in his later career. As we said, the last half of the 2010s, he kind of just stops acting. If I had to say a nail in the coffin movie, it's probably 2016 Zoolander 2. I never saw it. I know it didn't get great reviews, but it's, again, that thing where everyone's in the wig from the first movie, but you can kind of see more of the wrinkles. And it's just like, again, it's like that's a vain critique, I understand, but that's how audiences feel when they see these legacy sequels sometimes.
They're like college reunions. It's like, I just wanted to see all these guys again.
Yes.
Like, that's how it feels to me.
Yeah,
And it's funny how a lot of these, it seems like nail in the coffins are either these legacy sequels or the person bit off more than they could chew and are like playing 6 or 7 different characters. Like, you just sort of stop making movies the way that you're supposed to make a movie. Like, I don't know if there are very many movies. Maybe I'll just pitch this to you. Are there very many movies where one actor plays multiple characters, and it's like other than maybe Austin Powers,
Doctor Strangelove,
but
where it's a really good movie.
Yeah, it's a really hard thing to pull.
Yeah,
off.
it's really hard.
And
yeah,
I think
really hard.
that's
It works less than it does not work more than it works.
And
Yes,
also the many years removed sequel is a very
that's
difficult
tough. That's
thing to
really
pull
tough
off as
too.
well.
Yeah, for sure. Worth mentioning for our statisticians, when 2016 Zoolander 2 came out, Ben Stiller was 51, so that kind of mid-40s, early 50s. That's maybe the tipping point. We'll get to that later. Why did it stop, the white-hot prime, and why did his career tail off? I think basically just wanted to direct. Somewhat of an interest more in dramatic work. He's collaborated a lot with Noah Baumbach, and, that's part of it, but he really hasn't kind of pursued the dramatic acting route. I think he just kind of wants to be a filmmaker and probably just hit the midpoint of his life, and it's just like, all right, I'm half dead. It happens, the midlife crisis.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm half dead. How do I want to spend the second half of the career, right? And maybe it's just like, I want to be a director.
Clearly somebody who reveres the artistic side of film. I mean, with Cable Guy is such a sort of like unfair mark against him early in his career. You almost think like if that movie had sort of gotten the what it deserved, the praise that it deserved, there's this whole different career arc for him where he just goes into strictly directing comedies.
For sure. Yeah. He's seen as like a visionary where it's like, what a genre blend this movie is. And it's like, would we even have had Dodgeball and Meet the Parents and all this, great run of him as a leading man?
But I think too, I mean, it's like not very many, I don't think anyone else that we've talked about is a person who directs themselves in movies.
Right.
And I think he's just like has such a clear idea of what the films need and what he wants from the actors that it's like, I'll just do it. I'll just be that
do
guy.
it. Yeah. All right. Next comedy movie star, we have Will Ferrell. His background is one of sketch and improv, kind of the only improv guy in here. But his early career from 95 to 02, he was on SNL. I would maybe say he's the best ever.
Yeah.
Who's been on Saturday Night Live. It's a short list. I think it's probably Eddie Murphy. It's probably Bill Murray. It's probably Kristen Wiig, honestly. Will Ferrell, and maybe there's one or two other names, but it's like those are really the ones that jump to mind.
He just has the energy of, we went to an all-boys school, and I think Will Ferrell, he was like a cheerleader, right?
Yeah, or he was like a cheer captain, but he's kind of a jock too,
Yes.
like in high school, college.
You can just feel like if whatever high school Will Ferrell was at, whenever there was an assembly, like when Will Ferrell walked on the stage, you could just feel people nudging each other, like, okay, look out, what's
he gonna do?
That is the feeling that you have, particularly on SNL, and like even in the brilliance of him is immediately apparent, even in his audition tape. Boys get off the shed. He's pretending to be a cat. Like it's just he's just exudes funny,
and he's in contrast to kind of that old trope about comedians that you need to have this dark side, this sad clown side. You need to be like Richard Pryor and grow up in a brothel and face hardship, right? All right, all these comics have sad backgrounds. Will Ferrell's a guy who's always been open, like I like was, had it pretty cozy growing up and like was always had a lot of friends and was never really an outcast and got along. And you can really feel that with him. And it doesn't come across as like privileged or he's above you. And it's just like really awesome that he's just all about making you laugh.
Comfortable in his own skin.
100%. So Will Ferrell's 5-year prime is from 2003 to 2008. He's a little later than the rest of these guys, but he's still kind of in the window from age 36 to age 41, his median age 38. So he's slightly older, but again, kind of that mid-30s prime we've been talking about.
On SNL for quite a while. And
yeah, 7 years. Yeah.
I think, too, like, doesn't have your typical leading man looks.
Yes, I would say, again, he falls into that goofy, handsome thing we've been talking about. He's very tall. He's very striking. I think he's, from a female's perspective, we don't have one here, unfortunately, but if I have to speak for the entire gender, I would say he's probably more cute than handsome, right?
Yeah.
That's more how you'd kind of characterize
But, like,
him.
if with this first one that you're talking about, like, Elf, which immediately captures his man-child essence.
Yes. So in 2003, he comes out with Elf, and then on the other side of the coin, there's Old School, right? Both characters are man-childs, but Elf, very much a PG movie. Old School, very much a rated R movie. But again, it's that energy you talk about that he exudes. And let's just get to it now. That's his superpower, his energy. It's just like when he comes on screen, you're just like, oh boy, here comes the funny train.
Yes,
he just has that, right?
He looks like, how many of these guys who we've talked about would look funny just in the costumes? I think his the height of him, like the elf outfit, like you're laughing at the poster.
Yes.
Like, think about how rare that is.
And true, too, about Old School when he's in the mascot costume, and then even when he's shirtless, and he's got, the crazy abdomen scar, and he's got kind of the, like, brown sugar.
Burns.
Yeah, he's got the brown sugar, chest and body hair all over him. He just has a great comedy body that he's always willing to show off. 2004, we have Anchorman, the legendary Ron Burgundy character. For a lot of people, this is their favorite Will Ferrell movie, and it is a great Will Ferrell movie. It is a really funny, iconic Will Ferrell movie. But for us, the coup de grace, is that what do you think of my French there? Does that make
I
any
think your
sense?
French is good there.
It's
You had
good there.
Latin
It's
last
good. A little
episode.
Latin, little French. Not
Coup
bad.
de grace.
It's the coup de grace, the aforementioned many times on this Flynn Brothers podcast. 2006's Talladega Nights. That for us is his best movie. Just him as a movie star. He was always great at kind of the sports comedy. We'll talk about a couple later. But like Anchorman, just creates a really great, memorable character with a great, memorable voice, a lot of great, memorable lines, surrounds himself with really good actors that kind of elevate him, and of course he stands above them all, literally and figuratively. And man, it's just, when we get to comparing all these guys' primes and just the quality of the movies in their primes, it's really going to have to be tough to beat Will Ferrell.
This Talladega Nights, I think, is the most like seriously made comedy ever. Like you can just feel how locked in every single person is. The script is unbelievable. I mean, McKay would later reveal himself to be an Oscar-worthy director and is, I don't think, at a higher level than he is in this movie. Like this, I think this is the best that he ever is. I think it accomplishes a lot of these sort of social critiques that he wants to get later in his movies that he makes more overt. In this one, it's just completely under the surface, like the comedy, the emotion of it, the just pathos, to use a annoying word, but
we're
there's
getting
no
some
real,
Greek in there too,
some
huh?
Greek. Let's use all the dead languages. But like the emotion of a guy who loses everything and then has to humble himself to get it back is just so great. And again, the elevator pitch of Will Ferrell, race car driver, is just perfect.
2007, we have Blades of Glory. We talked about this on our Best Movie Year of the Century podcast series. But again, a great two-hander with John Heder. I think Ben Stiller produced this movie and was originally going to potentially be the Will Ferrell character, but really worked out well that Will Ferrell ends up being the character. He's just a perfect foil for John Heder, and really great, underrated comedy.
Just exudes the energy. I think that you need a larger guy than Ben Stiller to give off the character that he does. The flowing hair, he's in tights again, which is hilarious.
See him shirtless.
Yeah.
And
gets the people going.
And then 2008, we have Semi-Pro. So again, we have kind of the funniest sports being captured in film: basketball, figure skating, and race car driving, right? A lot of just great. And then, of course, he did Kicking and Screaming with Soccer. There was kind of this era in his prime where he was just like every single movie was sort of a sports comedy.
Yeah.
That was a good formula with Will Ferrell.
Yeah, sadly, I think this isn't. It's so funny, but Semi Pro is the first one where it's like
Slipping
yes,
a little.
Exactly.
The script just kind of isn't quite there. There's some great elements. The premise is wonderful on kind of a macro level. It's great, but when you get down to the details and the micro, it slips a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then another movie from 2008, Step Brothers. Wonderful comedy, holds up super well. Kind of the perfect epitome of his man-child persona.
Yeah, wins us all right back. I think it's the probably like sort of oldest that somebody pulled off being a man-child, and I think they just use it to perfection. I mean, again, another time where he puts John C. Reilly across from him. John C. Reilly, sort of this ultimate sidekick actor
100%,
throughout his career, who just really can elevate the material and does comedy and drama super well. And then obviously having McKay, and it's just like you're just really, really happy that they made that movie. And you got, again, they basically just recapture the formula from Talladega Nights. Let's take a rock solid concept. McKay directs, Farrell and Reilly, and we're going to surround them with really, really great character actors. I mean, Adam Scott was not even really a comedy actor before he got into this, and we were like, whoa. So it's like, I think...
And now it's all comedy.
Yeah.
And then, we talked about Will Ferrell and having the improv background. So much of his legacy now is these blooper reels that have found their way onto YouTube, and people just watching these blooper reels from Talladega Nights or Step Brothers or his Anchorman, other movies. And,
of course, Eastbound and Down.
And of course,
Ashley
Eastbound and
Schaefer.
Down, that probably most famously.
Deep down in my plums. I think that's maybe the funniest anybody has ever been.
Get captured on
camera. I think because you are making Danny McBride and Craig Robinson, who in themselves are two of the funniest dudes ever, who also have been in so many different movies and television shows and are professional comedy actors, and they cannot keep it together because he is just being so funny.
No, it's unbelievable. We talked about his superpowers, kind of this energy, right? It's a little ineffable, but it's definitely his energy. If you talk about Will Ferrell's extended prime, I think you could push it kind of to early 2010s. You have his last couple of Adam McKay collaborations with 2010's The Other Guys. Great send-up of the buddy cop genre with Mark Wahlberg. Just not as strong as Step Brothers.
No.
And Talladega Nights.
In theory, it really works, I think. And there are a lot of like funny sequences, like all the stuff about Eva Mendes being his plain wife, I think is really funny. And there are just some sequences, though, that the McKay and Farrell collaboration was so strong. And this movie, there's parts where it's just a little bit flabby.
Yes, I'd agree. And I think it extends into 2012's Anchorman 2, which, way funnier than it has any right to be. It's a really solid movie. The tough thing with Will Ferrell is, again, a vain critique, but he is, I would say, aging worse than the rest of these comedy movie stars we've talked about. Part of this was his prime came a little later than some of them. But by the time Anchorman 2, and he's in the shellacked makeup, he's in the Ron Burgundy mustache and wig and the suits. And they kind of lean into the fact that he looks a lot older, and they make a few jokes about that. But there is just this feeling when you're watching the movie where it's like, this might be his last shot at being super funny.
It's just
in terms of like a great comedy leading.
It is funny, and it is a little bit sad. And I think he does have like he's pretty good as a dramatic actor as well. We
for
just
sure.
have never really seen
Stranger
him.
Than Fiction, Everything Must Go. Yeah, there's a couple where he's been very good.
And I would be interested to see if maybe we get like there would be a kind of like you could just see him. Maybe there's a perfect role for him somewhere out there where he does something a little bit more dramatic, maybe a little bit more grounded. But at the same time, I think part of what his magic is based in that sketch comedy, and sketch comedy is all about huge, big characters in crazy costumes with crazy voices. And that's really when he's cooking.
And then his later career in 2014, he has the Lego movie, and then recently 2023 he's in the Barbie movie. And not a lot of great stuff in between. There's kind of the Daddy's Home movies and Get Hard and some of those other comedies, but they haven't been critically acclaimed really or done super well financially. And then of course the Nail in the Coffin movie is 2018's Holmes and Watson, the sad I think, final pairing between him and John C. Reilly. He was 51 years old when the film came out. So again, there's that mid-40s, early 50s striking again.
Yeah, and I think it is really sad because it's such strong material, and you're like, it's one of those things where it's like, this might just be crazy enough to work, and sadly, it's too crazy to work.
Yeah. So why does Will Ferrell's career kind of tail off? I think it's the end of his collaboration with Adam McKay. I think, I've read online, don't hold me to this, but I'm pretty sure the reason Anchorman 2 was made was so Adam McKay could secure the money to make The Big Short. And I think it's just they had hit a separation point in their careers where Adam McKay wants to make serious dramatic films and Will Ferrell wanted to keep being a comedy leading man, and then they both kind of just saw the writing on the wall and split. And I think that's sort of been difficult for both of their careers. We talk about the aging thing as well, and just he kind of, I think the Barbie movie was sort of a good first step in terms of like, okay, maybe I'll take on some more like supporting roles and be like comedic relief, almost like a Shakespearean approach where it's like, it's Midsummer Night's Dream and I'm Bottom. And it's just like, Bottom's the best character. Who cares if he doesn't have the most scenes, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's like you wonder if one of those solutions for aging comedy movie stars is kind of, some of these supporting roles, like you can get something pretty meaty there.
Yeah, and I do think he really lent Barbie like big time comedy credibility,
Yes.
and at the same time was a little bit searching for what that character was. The fact that he had the drumsticks in one of the scenes, and it's like, that is funny, but it does, what is that? What does that say about this character?
All these character kind of archetypes are like representing institutions, things that are bigger than something you can play as an individual.
Yeah, I think he was as beloved as anybody else. Somebody who was in this period of his career where it was like, I don't care what it is, if Will Ferrell's in it, I'm going to the movie theater.
I think that's something all these guys had, but especially for us growing up with Will Ferrell, it was just, I just think every type of person felt that way, regardless of race, gender, doesn't matter. Like everyone was like, I'm seeing the Will Ferrell movie.
Yeah, and you just want to see like a really nice couple roles in this last act for him. Like you just would, I think he would be somebody who were just desperate to have him come back, and clearly he still wants to make movies and was in the Amazon Prime movie with Reese Witherspoon. You can see him still have the desire to be in it. You just want him to have that final sort of role.
Quick break, we'll be right back. Okay, so we have concluded our investigations into the 6 careers of these comedy movie stars. Now it's time for some quick statistics. So one thing I've noticed is kind of the only thing in terms of comedy background that these guys all have in common is they've all done sketch comedy. And as guys who've done sketch comedy a lot and felt its impact in terms of helping our writing style in terms of writing for film and TV, I think it makes a lot of sense that a lot of these guys started in sketch because it makes you a better film and TV writer and performer. It basically just teaches you, okay, have a clear premise, make sure you hit the premise a few times and you keep escalating and then get out, right? It really just makes your writing a lot stronger.
And it's so different from stand-up comedy, because stand-up comedy is you just have observations that are funny. Sketch comedy, which is the translatable skill to film, you have to come up with a character who is funny. And the laughs are because this is true to the character as opposed to just being jokes.
Right, just a funny observation or sound effect, sure. Okay, so we talked about their ages all through this podcast series, would you call it? It's 2 parts. Can we call it a series or we need a third part, you think?
We're calling it a series.
We're calling it a series. Great. So the funniest age seems to sort of be early to mid 30s. The only exception to this is Eddie Murphy, who hit his prime kind of in his early mid 20s. And yeah, I don't know. We kind of talked about this at the top, but do you think like that is true of other genres as well? Like it'd be interesting to explore like, oh, is Tom Hanks at his best? It is early to mid 30s, Leo DiCaprio, etc. And then actresses, is it different for them because Hollywood tends to like the actress younger than the actor in these pairings? I think we kind of captured it with comedy that you want to be old enough to where we believe you have life experience, but we want you to be young enough to where you can still play someone in Arrested Development, sort sort of the man-child thing. You need that youthfulness, and if you get too old, we kind of shrink. I don't know. Is that? I know this isn't. We're scientific with our math, but now in our observations,
Well, we're interpreting the data at this point. I do think that is correct. I think that's
Yeah.
how old you. It is harder to get. It's harder to be as funny as possible when
Yeah.
you're younger, to like kind of hit your peak, and then eventually you just sort of lose maybe the energy that you have. It seems like sort of similar almost to not really being an athlete, I guess, because you're peaking more in maybe your like late 20s to early 30s,
Right,
whereas this
right.
is sort of early 30s to later 30s is where you really hit your peak. But yeah, I guess it's kind of like where you look the most like an adult.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
life has landed a few blows, but it hasn't knocked you down
right,
yet. And I
right.
think that's the funniest part, where you have a little bit of, again, the life experience, but you're not just cynical and contemptuous.
And then the age when these guys kind of stop being funny, we determine it's sort of your mid 40s to 50s. That's when a lot of them have the nail in the coffin movies, or just sort of fade into the mists, or kind of take a step back, or there's a lot of reasons this sort of stuff happens, right? We talked about they choose dramatic roles, which, can be self-imposed, but also probably like agents, publicists, managers talk to them. It's like, hey, it would really be good if you tried to get like a Golden Globe nomination or something.
People don't take you seriously.
Yeah,
this time,
right.
you know
It's just kind of like agendas, right? Where it's like, I don't know, I kind of just want to make people laugh. And I think success can change you too, right? Like, the more successful you get, the bigger budgets your movies will have, and that, the quality of the films won't necessarily be consummate with that.
The less people tell you no, the more you think you can elevate less good material,
Right.
the less ground you haven't already trod before. Like, it's hard to do something new when you've been in it for
Yeah.
a long time. And then also you probably get hit with your first like really negative reviews. Like, all of
Right,
these guys
right.
have turned in some stinker at some
And
point.
even early in their careers
Yeah.
did, and it's like, oh, you're young, and that kind of just like brushes off your shoulder, whereas you kind of hit a certain age and it's like, I really was kind of vulnerable and tried to just be kind of a buffoon in this movie, and I'm just getting slaughtered.
Yeah,
It's like,
why
I'm in
don't you
my-
love me?
Yeah.
You guys have always loved me. Why don't you love me? And I think that when that adoration has been given and then gets taken away, it's hard to.
And maybe too,
get
it's
back.
like, my kids, they're in middle school now. It wasn't so bad early when they
Yeah.
were young, and no one watched these movies, but I don't know.
Do I really want millions of people watching my kid's dad get kicked in the balls or seeing him fart at an opera?
Right. All right, so we've got the data. Early to mid 30s, these comedy movie stars are at their funniest, and then they kind of fall off by their mid 40s, early 50s. So let's talk solutions. How do we solve this, and who has solved it? So I think the man-child thing has an expiration date. You can't do the man-child thing the entire time, right? So at a certain point, you have to play your age, right? You can probably do the man-child thing until 40, I would probably say. Kind of Step Brothers, I think Will Ferrell's 41, and that is kind of the last time you can sort of do the man-child thing. And then other guys, it's like, okay, like him playing a married cop. That's a
Yeah.
little more age appropriate for a guy kind of getting into his mid-40s, right? So it's like you kind of got to play your age. Although, you kind of mentioned this, the Will Ferrell, Reese Witherspoon movie on Amazon Prime, You're Cordially Invited. I was noticing on the poster his hair is super dyed, and I was like, oh man, like Will Ferrell, he's like in his 50s, he's got this dyed hair. And then I watched the movie, and they kind of make a joke out of it, right? Because his beard is like white and gray, and his hair is like jet brown. So it's like, oh, like, they're kind of making fun of it. But it kind of has a hit or miss effect. It's like, I get they're being meta about it, but just because you're being meta about it doesn't mean it's always funny and works.
Yeah, insecurity, I think, is one of the things that turns people off from comedy. I mean, if you've ever seen a live show and you've seen a comedian be insecure, it is painful to watch. And even just a tiny bit of that seeping into you, and you do become a little bit more insecure in yourself. Your hair isn't what it used to be. Your body isn't what it used to be. You've got more folds and wrinkles and paunches. And I think, too, it is so exhausting to be really, really funny.
Yes.
Like, you
yeah.
see it
A
with
lot of
like-
energy. A lot of
Yes.
energy. Yeah.
And I think you just can't summon it up the same way that you could when you were younger once you start hitting your mid-40s.
A great example of an actor aging well into a comedy role is Robin Williams in World's Greatest Dad, which we've talked about. Great movie. And he's not being his usual Robin Williams self. It's very much like a toned down version. And I think that's maybe part of it as you get older, is you just kind of have to play more of the straight man in a more toned down version. It's like, leave all the buffoonery and energy to the younger actors, and then you can just kind of be the elder statesman, right?
I think too, it's like you gotta learn the other moves. Like
Yes,
to
yes.
make another comparison to basketball, when you're young, you can get by on your athleticism.
Right.
But unless you learn the footwork and the nuances of the game, you're not going to have a
Mid-range,
long
yeah,
career.
up and under, yeah.
You've been on, like, that's the thing. It's like Robin Williams been in show business for all these years, and he just becomes this phenomenal actor as he
Right.
gets older. And it's like,
Well, he went to Juilliard.
well, that's true. Well, but you can really see it
Sure,
more,
sure,
like
yeah.
what he's playing. And I think with some of these comedians who we have talked about, these comedy movie stars, they don't quite have those, top level acting chops that allow you to make that transition.
Yeah, I think one thing you can do is sort of what Adam Sandler's done. If you do have those chops, you want to get into it, you find a great collaborator or put yourself in the hands of great directors. So Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems with the Safdie brothers, he's worked with Paul Thomas Anderson. If you're able to find those collaborations, I think it's tough when you're Will Ferrell and it's like you came up with Adam McKay and you guys got so close on SNL, and then it's like, well, you kind of split and you're in your 50s and it's like, what am I going to do? Just go like banging on doors in Los Angeles, look at, hey, who wants to collaborate with me? Hey, young indie director, do you want to put me in a couple of movies in a row? It just is a little like implausible. It's just not really how those type of connections are made or how things really work. It just is very inorganic.
No, and it's sort of below you, and it's a risk too, like especially to do it on somebody who's unproven.
You have to be sought out by these, younger directors or kind of up and coming ones who like have had some success. And then it's like, I'm going to try and reinvent Will Ferrell. You can't, as the comedy leading man, go looking for it, but it's like you can be on the receiving end and you can be receptive to that invitation.
Yeah, and I think that is definitely a move that you can go for. But I mean, at the same time, it's like Uncut Gems was a big risk
For sure.
Sandler
Oh,
to
for sure.
do. And you have to be willing to put yourself on the line like that.
And I think, he's the leading man in that, but being the funny guy as a side character, right? We talk about Bottom and Midsummer Night's Dream. Be in a drama, be the supporting character, kind of the mob boss or like the kooky neighbor or like whatever the role is. If you're a comedy leading man, it's hard because you've been hitting home run after home run after home run. And then you're later in your career and you're on a team and it's just like, hey, we just need you to get an intentional walk. We just need you to get on base, right? We just need you to poke a single and then we're going to have a pinch runner, right? It's just like, you just have to kind of change your priorities.
It's better for people to want more of you in a movie than less.
Yes. And, if you pair with the indie directors, that's helpful too, because it's like, all right, you're working for cheaper a little bit. So it's like you can maybe focus a little more on quality versus like, oh, I'm going to be in this big, huge blockbuster, right? And the writing's going to be not as great and it's made by committee and it's like, oh, it'll be my same big, broad audience, but it's more schlock, right?
And it's further away from probably what got you into the business in the first place and what you loved about it originally. And I think the closer that you can get to that, the better you can be as an older comedy star.
And far, far, far down the line, if you last long enough, I look at guys like Steve Martin and Martin Short in Only Murders in the Building, and even them as like they're kind of doing their two-man shows, right? And they're wonderful in that. And if you last long enough, you get into your 70s and 80s, and then the entire joke becomes, I'm old, and it just works. Like you kind of have to sustain your like 50s, 60s, right? Where it's just like, what's funny about being an empty nester and like worried about your 401k and like, what am I going to do in retirement? And then it's like, you get to the like post-retirement age where it's like, I don't care anymore. I'm coming out of my driveway and I'm not looking behind me, right? I'm not checking the rear view mirror. And you get to that like, fuck it attitude of like old people. And I think there's something to say for that. If you like last long enough, you can get there, and then you're finding even more fertile ground to sow your comedy seeds.
Yeah, and at the same time, though, you don't want to be in these old fusty things that are
Right.
callbacks to history. You need to have your Selena Gomez.
Right,
Find
right,
someone
right,
who
right,
needs
right.
your comedy
Yeah,
chops,
yeah.
but is world famous.
Yes.
And makes you relevant. And
Yeah.
I think that is another way to go about it. It's like you need to be willing to sort of be like, wow, I'm probably at my peak was a bigger star than this person,
Oh, yeah.
or like maybe I've got some chops that they don't, but
Yeah.
at the moment they're hot and
Yeah.
I need a little heat and I can
And
give
I've-
them something that they don't have.
And I've had a couple of divorces, and my money's been cut in half a couple times. Yeah, dude, no, it's just that pragmatic stuff comes into it too.
that you gotta also think about. Our parents have said it. It's something that set them up for financial advice. If you want free advice from the Flynns, one house, one spouse.
Yeah,
It's,
save some money. Say if you can handle it.
if you can handle it. Not possible for everybody, but
It does keep costs down.
Yeah.
All right, let's finish with a few questions in terms of the legacy of all these guys. We got 3 of them. Number 1, who would you say of all these comedy movie stars has had the best career? So, sports comparison, Michael Jordan arguably better than LeBron James. LeBron James has had a better career in terms of his longevity, right? You could argue Jordan has more, MVPs, titles, etc., but you would probably say LeBron, Kareem, these guys have had longer, better careers. I'm going to go ahead and jump in if you don't mind.
Go for
I
it.
think best career, I would probably say Sandler, just because he's been able to do this second act that's been really successful. I think best prime, I would probably give more to Will Ferrell. I just think the quality of his movies and his prime were the absolute best. But I think Sandler, like, if you asked me this question 5 years ago, I don't think I would have said him. But
yeah, he just had a really bad downturn.
He just has kind of resurrected his career and is just probably the hottest of these guys right now in terms of industry juice. Ben Stiller maybe at this immediate moment because of Severance, but in terms of just overall aura and just guy who's still doing the comedy leading man thing, he's kind of the only one who's sustained it.
Yeah, I would say if we were keeping it strictly to comedy leading man, it's the Sandman for the longevity and the multiple career arcs. I agree with you on Will Ferrell, but then I would say that Stiller has an argument for best career in terms of all of the different things that he's done.
If he turns to film, you're looking at a guy who could be like nominated for Oscars for sure.
I'd say he's the person who I would find most believable to win an Oscar.
Yeah, which was a joke in Tropic Thunder.
Yeah.
Even though it's one of the great movies, right?
Totally.
Of the
And
era.
I do think, like, the other person, though, who I think could probably win one would be Sandler. But you kind of think if he didn't get it for Uncut Gems, like, that was kind of the perfect role for him.
for sure.
And so, yeah, Stiller, I think, has an argument, but those 3 are the guys who I think.
Second question, who's the most, quote-unquote, important of these comedy movie stars? Who would you say?
I'd have to say, you kind of made the comparison earlier, like the Bill Russell of it. It's maybe Eddie Murphy. Just kind of proved the proof of concept, showed that you could have a comedy leading man, that they could be cool, that they could be themselves, that they could be the central point around which you build a movie.
Yeah.
And even though all of his films didn't necessarily all come together perfectly, there are some just really, really excellent ones that I think laid the groundwork, in addition to, the groundbreaking nature of him being an African-American.
Everything you said, I think he's undoubtedly the most important. I think when you use a word like important, you're automatically going to default to, hey, who was kind of the guy who did it first? So I think it's a little loaded in that sense. But I do think it's Eddie Murphy. I just think none of these guys are around if it's not for Eddie.
Yeah.
All right, third question. Who is your favorite of all the comedy movie stars? Who is your personal favorite?
Man,
I have it narrowed down to 3. I'm curious if you would.
I've got 2.
You got 2. Can I hear the 2?
Yeah, I think it's Sandman and Will Ferrell.
Yeah, I would say that the young Jimmy Flynn is saying Jim Carrey, though. Like, is watching Ace Ventura and Batman Forever and just getting stirred up. But I do think Sandler and Will Ferrell, I think, for me, it's similar. I think Will Ferrell, I would just say, has better movies probably, and just movies I rewatch more in terms of like comedy movies. But Sandler is a screen presence. I maybe give a slight edge to.
I would say Will Ferrell characters are my favorite, and Sandman the guy is
the
my
aura.
favorite. Yes, yeah.
Very cool, very cool. All right, quick break, and then we are gonna play a wonderful game we call Franken-Comic. All right, Franken-Comic. We are going to build our ultimate comedy movie star with different parts from the all-time greats. So, sort of how Frankenstein's monster was, created from a dead body. They,
Yes.
Dr. Frankenstein.
Cadavers, parts of cadavers, yeah.
Parts of cadavers. We're going to do that. We're going to pick different attributes of different comedians and build the ultimate comedy movie star. So we're going to go back and forth. We'll switch off. You don't have to pick from just the 6 guys we talked about on the podcast series. You can pick any of the greats, any era, any type of comedy, film, TV, stand-up, etc. Other rule, you can only use each comedian once, okay? So we'll have a handful of categories. You can just use them once, okay? So first category we have for Franken-Comic is which comic's voice would you say you would choose for your Franken-Comic? So voice, I'm just saying pure sound of their voice, okay? So just the pure sound of their voice. Who you got?
I think it's Eddie Murphy.
Eddie Murphy.
I think
right.
he has this just, not in addition to the vocal performances that are great, he has a just like he can yell, he can talk quietly, he can sing. Like he really has a very, very multifaceted instrument.
I had a couple I was considering. Eddie Murphy's great. I had similarly Chris Rock, a great voice guy who's had a lot of great voice work. I'm watching Mid-Century Modern, this sort of throwback sitcom on Hulu, and Nathan Lane, dude, his voice, like he makes expository lines funny.
He's like a true theater actor,
and he's incredible in movies. And again, Timon, he's done a lot of great voice work as well. But in terms of voice, I just went with whose voice sounds the funniest, and it's Norm Macdonald.
Oh, wow.
He could read the phone book funny. I mean, the late, great Norm Macdonald, he just has, what? Like, he just has absolutely the greatest voice. So, again, these Franken-Comics, I don't know if I'd put them at the center of a movie. They're going to look a little insane. But for me, the funniest voice of all time, Norm Macdonald. All right, next category, we have face. So face, this will be your cadaver are you going to plunder for your face? So face is purely just the look of the face, right? We're going to get into the more specifics later. But the face, we talked about kind of the goofy handsomeness that great comedy leading actors have. But who do you got for your face?
Well, I went with Jim Carrey because I do think his face. I cheated a little bit. I do want the muscles that he has in the face. I want the range of motion that he has, even though I have different people for expressions.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I do think that
You're teasing our next category.
You can really sort of plug in Jim Carrey into almost any type of movie.
That's great.
And he has been in every type of movie, really. And he can give you what you need.
Face, I went with Ben Stiller. I think it's just the perfect balance of handsome and goofy. And as I said before, you just really root for him. He just has a very endearing, tender face, and you just he just looks like a really nice guy. And maybe he's a tyrant on set, who knows? But he just seems like a really, really nice guy.
Yeah, I'd say that's definitely true, and I think Jim Carrey definitely has a bit of that as well, particularly like the Truman Show. And things like that,
for sure. Okay, so next category, which you teased without permission, is expressions, which is we'll define this as kind of reactions and how you're moving this face. So a lot of this would be, turning to camera, a la Jim in The Office. Or Johnny Carson making a expression when he hears Don Rickles say something crazy on the Tonight Show. So this is just how you're reacting, how you're making expressions. You're moving your eyebrows, you're moving your eyes. Whose expressions? Who you got?
So I went this was the one I considered, but I went a different direction ultimately. The one who I originally considered was somebody who never spoke during his career, and I said Stan Laurel of Laurel and Hardy, who made a million different expressions. And really, if you've never watched the Laurel and Hardy, watch the Piano Box. It's outrageously funny. Very thin guy and a big fat guy, and they get into silent comedy adventures together. Stan Laurel makes a million funny faces. He has a trademark look where his eyes are squinted and his eyebrows are way up, and it's this big like Cheshire grin smile. And I think it's still funny today. I've never even seen anyone else attempt it. But I think my guy who I ultimately went with, and this is because in his hot movies, half of the laughs are just based on the way that he is reacting to stuff. Mike Myers.
for
Mike
sure,
Myers
for
can
sure.
go to camera. He can react to two people.
For
Like
sure.
he just has such a great way
sure.
to feed off things.
Yeah, that's terrific. Both are wonderful. I'm a bit envious, I'll confess. My honorable mention here is Dave Chappelle.
Oh, yeah.
Dave Chappelle's eyes and mouth are just pure gold. I mean, he just has super expressive eyes, the way he'll kind of do a wry smile, the way he'll do like subtle act outs and then big act outs. It's really incredible. Like I think in terms of his expressions, I think he said one of his career influences is Bugs Bunny, and he has that kind of little stinker attitude
Yes.
he'll sometimes have. But expressions, you chose him for face. I went with Jim Carrey. I interpreted expressions more as kind of the movements of the face, the reaction. So I went with Jim Carrey for expressions. Next category, we have delivery/timing. So we did voice, which is the pure sound. This is now delivery and timing. So you got to think kind of rhythm of delivering dialogue, intonation, sort of stuff like that. Does that kind of make sense in terms of differentiating from voice?
Yes,
Okay.
I went with another really old comic who I think I'll say my honorable mention is someone who you've already mentioned, Norm Macdonald,
Yes,
who is the
yes.
master of dry delivery, of really meandering punchlines or like these shaggy dog jokes, no one's better, or just slipping something by you. He is incredible with his timing. But I think he's the originator of it, Mr. Million Jokes a Minute, Groucho Marx.
Yeah,
I think he
that's
really
a good
has
one, man.
just.
Oh my
If
god!
you ever dust off some
Yeah.
of those old movies,
Yeah.
he is telling so many jokes so fast
Yeah,
and just like has this vaudeville sensibility. That is unreal.
Oh, dude, I'm jealous. That's a great one. One I just thought of, Patrice O'Neill. He talked about meandering punchlines and just, hitting the audience like a sucker punch. His delivery and timing was impeccable. Gene Wilder, I think timing versus delivery, incredible timing he had. But the guy I went with, old school guy, Jack Lemmon.
Yeah.
Jack Lemmon is an unbelievably gifted comedic actor. If you have never seen the film The Apartment, watch the film The Apartment. He is so studied in his movements, but just his timing, his kind of neurotic character he'll play a lot. You can just tell he rehearses the shit out of every, monologue, every line of dialogue. His timing is impeccable. Like you could set a watch to Jack Lemmon and his dialogue deliveries. So yeah, Lemon's great, man. Groucho though, that really tough to beat Groucho.
Wilder and Lemon though are two of the guys who they are comedic actors, but just capital A actors.
Yes, doesn't matter the genre every time they deliver. Okay, body is our next category. So body is just shape, height, etc. So just physical appearance of the body. The category after this will be we'll call athleticism. So that'll be more kind of physical comedy. But this is just body, pure shape and look of body on your Franken-Comic. What do you got?
Chris Farley.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
I think
awesome.
he's
That's
just one
awesome.
of the funniest looking guys ever.
That's great.
And
The hair, the body,
yes.
Even his face, and just like, especially like, toward the end as he got bigger and, further into drug use is a little sad. But
Little
him
sad,
like on
but
SNL, Tommy
yes.
Boy, perfect. Perfect.
Just the guy who you see him walk onto screen and you're already laughing.
There's kind of two comedy bodies. I would say there is kind of big and fat, and then there's sort of the tall and really skinny. The tall and really skinny is kind of the Dick Van Dyke, Jim Carrey, and then you'll have big and fat, which is kind of, like you said, Chris Farley, and you'll kind of have like short and fat, more like Jack Black and stuff. I went with a guy who's kind of in both camps. He's tall, but he's big. From The Honeymooners, Jackie Gleason. Jackie Gleason has super top heavy, but incredibly graceful.
Yeah.
Like there's an episode of The Honeymooners where they go dancing, and the guy could just move. I mean, he was probably like 400 pounds at his biggest, and he just was incredible. And just the way he used his body and just his presence. And if you've never seen The Honeymooners too, it's pretty incredible because they, it's one of the early shows from the 50s, when TV was first starting to come around, and holds up, all these decades later. And Gleason is so brilliant because the TV show is broadcasting to millions, but he's also performing in a studio live for hundreds of people. And to act live for hundreds of people and also have it translate to the folks at home. Like you talked about Nathan Lane being a theater actor. It's really hard doing live, and like theater comedy is so different from like film comedy a lot of the time. So it is pretty incredible to go back and watch those Honeymooners episodes. But Gleason, he's my comedy body. All right, athleticism. So this is pratfalls, physical comedy, etc. Who do you got?
This one I'm really proud of. I had considered Gleason for the exact nimbleness that you described. I'm going, though, with Jackie Chan.
Oh, that's awesome.
Who is a hilarious physical comedian.
Yeah. If you haven't seen a lot of his films, they are comedic. Like
They're
it's
comedies.
It's a lot of physical comedy.
Yeah, and he also is a stuntman, puts his body on the line.
That's awesome.
There's a movie called Police Story where there's a scene of literally just Jackie Chan answering like 5 phones at once and like keeping some on his feet, like balancing like 3 on his arms, like just
like the Cat in the Hat.
Yeah, he's truly one of the like most gifted people in terms of coordination ever.
Yeah. I don't know. Phenomenal. I had to mention Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, all the silent film guys. Dick Van Dyke, if you've never seen Drunk Uncle, look it up on YouTube, him doing the Drunk Uncle bit. I went with, though, I kind of was looking at these and I was like, I want to pick a gal. So I went with Melissa McCarthy.
Wow,
she's
great.
awesome physically. Spy is a movie loaded with physical gags. Like Chris Farley, just like aware of like, hey, I'm like bigger. And it's like, there's some comedy elitists who probably find big people taking off their shirt or falling down hack. Whatever. If you want to take that perspective, fine. But it's just like if they're doing the joke and like they're cool with the joke and like everyone likes the joke, it's just like maybe it's just funny.
Yeah.
And so like I think Melissa McCarthy is just wonderfully gifted in terms of her physical comedy, not just in terms of like big pratfalls, but also her expressions as well.
Her physicality.
Yes, her physicality and just her presence, right?
Yeah.
You would definitely feel her if she came into a room, just has that movie star aura.
Yeah.
Okay, next one. Last 2 categories. We have screen presence. So screen presence, this is movie star pixie dust. Just can't take my eyes off of them when they're on screen. Who you got?
The Sandman.
Sandler. Yeah, he was my honorable mention. Another guy I had as an honorable mention, Vince Vaughn.
Wow.
For that sort of old school Wedding Crashers, dodgeball period. Just his patter. He was very, very cool, and just how quick he is, and very witty and handsome. He has tremendous screen presence. I went with Eddie Murphy, though. Eddie Murphy, just total movie star. Even on like SNL 50, when he showed up and did a couple sketches, it was like there was a sketch where he was in with Will Ferrell, and Will Ferrell's like the king, but it was like everyone was like, I can't believe Eddie Murphy's in this sketch. And it was like part of it was like, I can't believe Eddie Murphy and Will Ferrell in this sketch, but it's just like, oh my God, I'm watching Eddie Murphy do comedy. And it's just like, I think part of why I give him this is it's been longer since I've seen him do it, so maybe there's a bit of a nostalgia factor and he's withheld it maybe, and it's a little absence makes the heart grow fonder, whereas I can see Sandler still do comedy. But yeah, I think both guys definitely the strong choices.
I think he's just Sandman for me, exudes Hollywood now, like just in terms of comfort in his own skin. I mean the terrible clothes that he wears nowadays, and yet is still like the coolest guy. Like the thing he did at the Oscars with Conan O'Brien hosting it, where you have all of the most famous people in Hollywood. Sandman has a 3-minute bit where he starts out as himself, and by the end of it is a raving lunatic screaming a Chalamet into his ear, and then leaves. He's gone. He's not sticking around for like that.
He probably went home.
That's the coolest guy. That's
for
the
sure. Last category. Energy, which we talked about. This is the ability to supercharge scenes that they are in. It's a little like screen presence, but it's just, oh man, like their comedy energy, God-given. Who you got?
Ferrell.
Same, Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
Hard to go wrong there.
Man's just the funniest feeling person that there's ever been, I think. Like, you just see him and you're like, that guy's hilarious.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that'll do it.
If I may, hold on.
I was just about to go to the end there.
I know. I wanted to interrupt you because I felt, again, as you said, Melissa McCarthy, we only had one woman on this podcast. I thought of 2 more attributes that we could get some women in here, and some
wonderful.
I think, worthy people to be mentioned. Writer brain.
Oh, good.
Tina Fey.
Yeah, Tina Fey
probably is.
Tina Fey for sure. I would say if you're talking best comedy writers of the last 30 plus years, I would say it's her and Larry David.
Yeah. That's true.
I think
LD,
that's the
great
other
one.
guy I would
Yeah.
throw on there. Just Seinfeld and Curb. I mean, that's 20 years of brilliant comedy.
Yeah.
And I think Tina Fey, 30 Rock, it's the greatest sitcom of all time, and most of it's the strength of her writing, and just she worked so hard at the writing.
She was the sun around which that show.
So yes,
orbited.
we'd be remiss if we did not include her as well. Would you have one last category?
Producer brain,
Okay.
Lucille Ball,
Yeah, has to be.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
who I think just like in addition
She's the
to
reason there's Star Trek.
yes, like in addition to being an unreal like timing, like has all of the things that we're talking
For
about.
sure.
Like
Yeah, for
I mean,
sure.
I think you really can't discuss a lot of what we have in comedy today without really mentioning her and Jackie Gleason are just
Yes.
two of the foundational. Every single male comedian takes pieces from Jackie Gleason. Every single female
Yep,
comedian
100%.
takes pieces from Lucille Ball. In addition to that, just someone who carved a path like to have your husband who speaks English as a second language and is Cuban, and you're
Yeah.
like, actually, no, even at a time when, racial division in this country was in an ugly state, she's like, we're going to have an interracial couple, and that's going to be like the core of the jokes in the shows. And again, yeah, she Star Trek, all other sorts of pictures, and just an absolute titan.
Could have had Lucille Ball in literally every single category.
true.
100%. May I wrap up the show?
Yeah.
Thank you, buddy. Please subscribe, comment, and leave a rating. Send questions, comments, or big idea suggestions to our business email, flynnbrospod@gmail.com. We always say that at the end of these podcasts, but there's a ton of comedians we have forgotten just by virtue of we can't talk an infinite amount of time. So we implore listeners, please send us your Franken-Comic, your list of comics we missed, and also some words of praise couldn't hurt too, just to pad the ego. But please,
Yeah.
please send it to flynnbrospod@gmail.com. Thank you to our producer, Will Slade, and we'll see you next time on the Flynn Brothers Podcast. Take care, buddy.
Hey, buddy, you take care.